Hello and welcome to this last Lit in 5 video looking at the tragic arc of Othello throughout the play. This is useful if you're looking at the aspects of tragedy module for AQA. There's also plenty of reference here to the effects of love as well. So if you're looking at the love through the ages specification for AQA, there should be some useful things in here also. If you found this series useful, please add some comments or some suggestions or requests underneath. I'll try to accommodate those wherever I can, or just let me know if it's been useful in any assessments that you've had. Okay, let's look at the final act now. So I've just gathered 5 quotations here from across Act 5, Scene 2, which I thought were very useful to bring up at the start of this final act, really. The first one there in the sort of bottom left-hand corner is from Emilia, really powerful character. Shakespeare's great at having many female characters whose voice becomes very powerful towards the end of the play. So Cordelia in King Lear, Paulina in A Winter's Tale, so many great characters, you know. And you often see their words expressed in terms of a powerful voice. I will throat it, I will trumpet it, and all the different kind of metaphors he has for this loud, powerful female voice kind of late on in the play. But here's one of those moments here from Emilia addressing Desdemona. O mistress, villainy hath made mocks with love. So villainy has made a mockery of love, referring to her husband Iago, of course. So that just goes to show you how love is almost an hamartia. It's a weakness. It is susceptible to being attacked and manipulated and preyed upon by villainy. And that's been absolutely true thus far in terms of Othello's tragic arc. So there's an important one there from Emilia. Coming around sort of clockwise here, we have Othello when he first thinks he's successfully killed or smothered, suffocated Desdemona. We see here, "O insupportable, O heavy hour, methinks it should now be a huge eclipse of sun and moon, and that the affrighted globe should yawn, should gape at the change here or the outcome." So just a reminder that, you know, in terms of the personal tragedy of this is, you know, devastating to Othello, to the point where he thinks something in the planets should signify how momentous this is. You know, a huge eclipse of the sun and the moon. So you could also think about black and white imagery there, perhaps, as well. And that the globe itself should gape at the monstrous outcome of this. Just flagging that up to remind you that this has all been caused, this personal devastation has all been caused by one man, Iago, with a few words and a few trifles as light as air, which are to the jealous proof as holy writ, you know. So just a very powerful quote there, which shows the impact of what one person's malignity has done upon, you know, the life of our protagonist here. Coming around to the centre, there's a quote that links nicely with Emilia's words about the sort of the Achilles heel of love, or how love is for another is a weakness. There's Othello talking of himself. Then must you speak of one that loved not wisely, but too well. So there are 2 great quotes there to talk about how love is potentially a weakness or a flaw, which is absolutely preyed upon and exploited by quote unquote villainy, the villainy of Emilia's husband, Iago. Last 2 things to mention here. We have a couple of mentions here from Othello, acknowledging or bringing up his service, his status and his previous kind of status. I have done the state some service and they know it. No more of that. And then if you look across to the right hand side there, no, I am not valiant neither. But why should honour, my past service to the state, outlive honesty? Let it go all. Okay, so there's an idea here that Othello is almost being purged or cleansed of that hubris, and he recognises how worthless it all is now, given what he's just done and been manipulated into doing. Then, of course, we have these really beautiful moments of anagnoresis, realisation here. the self-knowledge that the hero, tragic hero, the protagonist, gains just before, or almost too late if you like, before their death, which is necessary. So we'll go into more detail later, but look at famous quotes like the base Indian who threw a pearl away, and the reference to killing a turbaned Turk in some of the wars that Othello has fought on behalf of Venice, where Shakespeare has him draw a parallel with the turbaned Turk who he once killed, but more of that later. So there's some very kind of resonant and important quotes and some key ideas in terms of tragedy there, just at the outset. But let's work our way through some quotations now. Just one small quote from Act 5, Scene 1 here. The bulk of this video devotes itself to Act 5, Scene 2. But I thought we'd look at this for a little moment. So here's all your adjectives, again, foolishly applied towards Iago. Brave, Iago, honest and just. That has such noble sense of thy friend's wrong. Think about the idea of the civil monster we mentioned in previous videos. Noble as an adjective, of course, has been used about Othello early in the play. We're about to show you how that's dramatically changed in Act 5, Scene 2, of course, but none of those are applicable towards Iago. Have a look here as well, please. We still have these ideas of misogyny at work here. So the idea of some kind of seductive temptress leading to sort of male ruin, sort of like a Medusa figure or an Eve figure. Those classic sort of archetypes of misogyny. So, forth of my heart, those charms, your eyes, Desdemona, are blotted. So I've made myself immune to the charm and the power of your eyes. Thy bed, notice how it's not our bed now, so distancing himself from it. Lust stained, it isn't, shall with lust's blood be spotted. So remember, Othello is thinking this idea of justice, which is just and apt and appropriate. This is a fit and deserved punishment for the crime of adultery and cuckoldry. That's obviously how he's thinking at this stage. Derogatory terms, of course, strumpet, all these kinds of things, that there are worse, of course. But there's a moment from Act 5, Scene 1. You could look at the heroic couplet there as well, or the rhyming couplet, same thing, different name. Probably reinforces how Othello, he's reluctant to do this, and it causes him great pain, as we'll see in Act 5, Scene 2. But this is a necessary mission, requiring all of his manly fortitude to inflict this, as he sees it, just and deserved punishment on his, brackets, innocent wife. Okay, so a few key things to zoom in on here in terms of Othello as he sort of steels himself towards the act of killing Desdemona, punishing her, as he would see it. So the pronoun there, it, just to keep you aware of that, refers to adultery. It, the adultery, is the cause. It is the cause, my soul. It is the cause. So he is trying to sort of steel himself for this awful task. Have a little look at the stuff in blue here as well, and look at how it sort of appears amongst all the things I've highlighted in green now. So the green is this kind of beautiful figurative language, some metaphors and some similes. Desdemona is at least 4 things I can make out here. Skin, snow, which is then alabaster, light, and then she's transformed into a rose, metaphorically. So all these things are admiring her beauty in this kind of wonderful poetic figurative language Shakespeare uses. But interspersed in between these are these kind of, well, they're kind of a pattern now, I guess, these moments of misogyny and hatred of Desdemona as an adulterous woman. So if you look here, I'll not shed her blood. So there's Othello sort of being presented as, having some kind of Christian sort of charity about him. He's not going to kill her in a brutal way, if you can believe that, but that's where that's going. Her skin is whiter as snow. There's the white and the purity again, which obviously reinforces her innocence. Put out the light, but once I put out the light, I won't be able to, how does he put it here, relume. So this is final. If I do this, then there's no kind of going back on this. When I have plucked the rose, I cannot give it vital growth again. It must needs wither. I'll settle for smelling a rose on a tree in future. But interspersed, like I say, between all this kind of poetic stuff, yet she must die. There's that modal verb, okay? And look at the conjunction, yet. She's beautiful. Change of direction with the conjunction, yet she must die, or else she'll betray more men. Now, this is still sort of registering as an act of necessary heroism and manly fortitude from Othello, who is our general and our soldier, of course. He sees this as a kind of duty to the Commonwealth to prevent further adultery and further male victims. So you can see a hierarchy here, can't you? Poor Desdemona herself doesn't figure anywhere in this kind of hierarchy. More important is the damage she may do to fellow men or other men in future. Thou cunningst pattern of excelling nature. Again, that's praiseworthy. She is sort of peerless in her beauty. Nature has made something truly beautiful. But look at how that's preceded with cunning. All right. So there's that sort of female temptress idea again. As he kisses her, this is almost, danger and deadly for Othello, because it might steer him away from the task he feels compelled and obliged to do. She must die. Her sweet breath that dost almost persuade justice. Justice is feminised as a god, apparently, to break her sword. Now, okay, we know justice is feminised here, but look at the power Desdemona's beauty has. It would take and break a powerful weapon. So there's a very strong reflection on how difficult and how painful, how arduous Othello is finding this right now. However, this really powerful speech ends, or kind of concludes here with, this sorrow is heavenly. So this act that I am about to perform, it is of divine justice. So he has to rise above it. And again, he almost feels passive. He has no agency here, to his mind. He is compelled and obliged to do it. So in terms of tragedy and this kind of, absolutely key moment, sort of heightened feelings and passion, we've got an agnoresis, we've got hamartia of blindness, this is the scene famously where, I think it was in a 19th century production, a member of the audience pulled out a musket, a gun, and shot the actor who was about to walk towards the actress playing Desdemona and pretend to suffocate her with a pillow. So this is, there's an example of how extremely affecting this is as a powerful piece of drama. In an approach that's sort of similar to the presentation of Othello in Act 1, we've just seen Othello citing this act as an act of divine justice. So it's very important that this action is seen to be informed or supported or reinforced by a sense of Christianity and Christian sort of morality here. So, have you prayed tonight, Desdemona? And then we've got things like, think on thy sins, and that I would not kill thy unprepared spirit. So there's the sort of Christian side of Othello, even though he's been manipulated into a barbaric act here. These moments are sort of scattered with sort of legal / religious lexis here. So you can see things like crime unreconciled, solicit for it straight, sins, and so there's lots of that, and there's more coming up in a moment. I also want to point out a second thing here as well, just to remind you of that boast and that claim that Iago had, where he will turn her virtue, Desdemona, into pitch. So if you look in the right hand column there, Othello says, think on thy sins, and then Desdemona reply, or Shakespeare has Desdemona reply with, they are loves I bear to you. Okay, so the transformation of love into sin, or sins are now being confused with or misinterpreted, not seen as loves. there's a powerful sort of testimony in terms of what Iago has actually managed to do in terms of transforming here. Interesting here that our soldier, our powerful soldier, who, and we see some boasts about his previous glories coming up shortly, and we've seen some in other videos as well. Desdemona notes that, why are you biting your lower lip? Some bloody passion shakes your very frame. So, I mean, you know, it's not like a weak criticism of Othello saying, well, you can kill lots of soldiers, but you can't keep it together to kill your wife. He is, you know, about to kill the woman he loves, even though he's conflicted. But I do think it's very telling here. And the notion of passion. Okay, so we've had that debate about reason versus blood, and our logic and our mind being sort of civilized human beings. But when we're at the mercy of our passions, we give in to blood and passions and become more animalistic and savage. It's interesting that Shakespeare has that echoed again here, but from the perspective of Desdemona, who witnesses a powerful, strong husband shaking his very manly frame, that soldier of great reputation there. Okay, moving on. Plenty more of that sort of religious / legal lexis here. Sweet soul, take heed of perjury. Therefore confess thee freely of thy sin and oath. I'm going to come back to strong conception in a moment. O perjured woman. And then Othello referring to Cassio as that he hath confessed. It's very important to note there, I think, that Cassio hasn't confessed. Othello thinks it is a confession because he's been handling the handkerchief, of course. Now, send that right back to Act 3, Scene 3, where Othello says to Iago, give me the ocular proof that she is disloyal, or something like that. How flawed is that? Is that absolutely undeniable proof of adultery? The fact that Cassio has a handkerchief that was given to Desdemona? Well, we know it's not, okay? But it's a reminder here that trifles as light as air are as proofs of holy writ to the jealous, okay? And of course, his vanity, his pride and his hubris all working in conjunction with Iago's manipulation. So that isn't a confession. It is deeply flawed to see us handling an object as a confession. We know how it got there. All right. So something to bear in mind there in terms of Othello's fallibility and his own errors of judgment. Not without manipulation, of course, and not without that third factor of external factors of misogyny and race. I think the way Shakespeare has Othello word this here, I mean, we're aware it's wrong and false all the time. It's slander, to use a word that Emilia uses soon. But by heaven, I saw my handkerchief in his hand. Okay, and that's ocular, undeniable proof. No, it isn't. So I think it's at this point the audience really sees the ridiculousness of how, again, to use an Iago quote, it always comes back to Iago, how he can be tenderly is led by the nose as an ass. He has been led by the nose as an ass throughout the play, of course. Here, kind of in the middle, sort of early on here, towards the top, as you can see on screen, we've got Othello in a sense of duty here. Therefore confess thee freely of thy sin, for to deny each article, put that in another legal word as well, charge with oath, cannot remove or choke the strong conception that I do groan withal. Thou art to die. Okay, I like that sort of monosyllabic, sort of stark language Shakespeare has Othello use. Now, this is a sense of purpose, of course, the strong conception, the thing that I have to do, my purpose, that I do groan withal, which is burdensome and painful, and, deeply, terrible in Othello's perspective. However, I want to focus on the word conception there. There's maybe just a little sort of structural echo of Iago's boast earlier of I must bring this monstrous birth to light. I'm not sure if I'm word perfect there, but I do know monstrous birth is a powerful Iago quote. Okay, so I think there's a clever little structural link, just again to remind you of the hand that Iago has had in all of this, how he is the major architect of this moment of awful tragedy where a deeply loyal and devoted woman is being murdered for adultery she has not done. Short extract here which shows that, or reinforces once again, that Othello is at the mercy of his blood or his appetites as well. We've had the sort of Christian aspect here, that he isn't going to savagely cut her all to pieces, tear her all to pieces, as one of the quotes we had in the previous video. But had all his hairs been lives, referring to Cassio here, my great revenge had stomach for them all. So in terms of the supposed love rival who's turned Othello into a cuckold, then he would kill Cassio many times over. Just down the bottom here as well, again with that sort of conception, that burdensome purpose, that painful task Othello has to do. Look at how the indecision and the inaction of earlier has been removed now. Othello is kind of once more that man of purpose and stoic strength and fortitude. So Desdemona's pleading for a little bit more time to pray, or to try and gather proof. He denies that. Kill me tomorrow, let me live tonight. Nay, if you struggle but half an hour, being done there is no pause. But while I say one, it is too late. He stifles her. So in a way, that's sort of him regaining an aspect of his masculinity there, and restoring his masculine hubristic pride. It's a massive error, of course it is, we know that, but there's something of the old resolve and the old Othello being demonstrated there, to his mind, of course. I thought we'd just put 3 banks of quotations on here. We're not going to go through all of these, but these are 3 useful sections to show how far Othello has fallen here in terms of his public reputation. So if you recall videos from Act 1 and certainly Act 2, when he returns from war, you can't move, can you? For noble Moor, the warlike Moor, the warlike noble Moor, the Moor who is noble and warlike, and all these kinds of things. They're everywhere early on in the play. But again, with that powerful sort of voice from a powerful female figure with uncompromising and, sharp truths. Emilia here again. We have plenty of this, which we'll look at in a moment. Also recall Lodovico from Act 4, Scene 1, when he's just witnessed Othello strike Desdemona. Is this the noble Moor whom our full senate call all in all sufficient? Is this the nature whom passion could not shake, whose solid virtue could neither graze nor pierce nor dart, or these kinds of things? He is much changed, says Iago, in a very cool, nonchalant way, even though he's caused all that change. But look at the change and the transformation and how he's perceived now. Oh, gull. So we spoke about, probable to thinking, credulous fools are thus caught. We've used the word gulled, okay? Easy to fool, or gullible is the word we have now as the adjective, don't we? So look at Emilia here in the middle. Oh, gull, oh, you dolt, you idiot, as ignorant as dirt. Dirt, of course, being synonymous symbolically with the coloured black. So Othello is starting to fulfil those expectations now, stereotypical racist expectations. Always the fact that he's been led there by Iago is important to put in. Over on the right, oh, thou dull Moor. So there's that lack of intelligence again. You dull, you stupid Moor. Again, you've got to credit Iago. Unbookish, Othello's world is simple. He can see the enemy, he knows what side he's on, but Janus figures, manipulators and civil monsters, Othello has no skill to combat that kind of opponent or antagonist, does he? Even more from, yet again, Emilia, such a great character. The audience are sort of siding with her, and she's a major part of the audience's catharsis. I guess everything you've been thinking about Othello now for pretty much 4 acts, Emilia comes out with what the audience, you idiot, you fool, you ignorant so-and-so, you dull so-and-so, you murderous coxcomb. A coxcomb is the hat of a fool or a jester. So you murderous coxcomb, what should such a fool do with so good a woman? You don't deserve her, basically. And a little bit later on, this is not quite in sequence, Othello agrees with that and confirms himself as, oh fool, fool, fool. So if you need to, over the course of your essay, span very quickly, noble, warlike, most sufficient, and then go straight to all, as many of these as you want. There they are, all there for you. Okay, so our last two slides then in terms of the final act and our final video. So I thought we'd start in the bottom right-hand corner here, when Lodovico says, what should be said to thee, Othello? You've once so good, but you've fallen in the practice of a damned slave, referring to Iago. Interesting sort of inversion there, given Othello is the former slave and labels himself now as a slave, given what he's been manipulated by and what he's been deceived by. But look here, there's still a concern with status here, if you notice. An honourable murderer, if you will. For nothing I did in hate, but all in honour. So there's a sort of criticism of sort of masculine pride, I think, in the sense that he felt compelled to kill his own wife. Okay, it turned out to be a mistake and through deceit. But he still wants recognition for the fact that he was acting as is expected of a man who values his own honour and reputation. So that's still kind of important to him, you should note there as well. However, surrounding this are these moments here, look. So, still a concern with reputation here. I have a weapon. Now, you've just seen Emilia talk about, I care not for thy sword. I'll make thee known though I lost 20 lives. The Moor hath killed my mistress. Murder, murder. It's almost as if that reputation and fear he once held as a powerful soldier doesn't hold fear for anyone anymore. Certainly not Emilia. There's her words on the previous slide. I don't care if you hurt me. Thou hast not half that power to do me harm as I have to be hurt. I care not for thy sword. So there's another way in which there's that demotion and that fall from grace, that peripeteia for Othello there. But for this moment here, there's another kind of moment where he has a weapon, and then he's a little bit of hubris still appearing here. A better weapon never did sustain itself upon a soldier's thigh. So look at this idea of him being peerless again, beyond compare. I have seen the day that with this little arm and with this good sword, I have made my way through more. Look at these comparative adjectives. So better, more impediments than 20 times you. This is referring to Graziano. And then he stops himself. Oh, but vain boast. And then I'm going to come back to who can control his fate. Look over here, which you mentioned at the beginning. So there's this kind of demotion of himself, sort of purging himself of this male pride and hubris that has played a major part in the tragedy here. So I am not valiant neither. Why should honour, the duties performed the state, outlive honesty? Okay, so there's that idea now, like I said, being purged and being cleansed of this ridiculous hubris that has had a massive impact upon the fate of Desdemona and Othello. Let it go all. Okay, so O vain boast, let it go all. There's this anagnoresis now. There's this realisation, too late of course, but that's what anagnoresis is about, of his own culpability in his own tragic downfall and eventual death. And of course, he's labelling himself here now as O cursed slave. He has formerly been a slave, but here's this sort of full circle thing again, where he has been led to embody and sort of confirm many of the stereotypes the audience would have had about a Moor of Moorish descent from Act 1. Really powerful language of regret here as well, where he feels he absolutely deserves to be sent to hell. So where should Othello go, heaven or hell? And then his language confirms once more when he looks at the pale Desdemona, pale as thy smock, pale as thy chastity or virtue. So he does confirm that he believes it in terms of virtue there, that he will go to hell, even like thy chastity. Whip me, devils, from the possession of this heavenly sight. Winds roast me in sulphur, liquid fire, Desdemona dead. And that's where he believes he is destined to go. Just after that as well, look at how he's referring to himself in the third person here in a sort of alienated way, to register his fall from grace and reputation. Where is this rash and most unfortunate man? That's he that was Othello. Here I am. So there's a different self now. Not the Othello of old here, but a shadow or a pale imitation of that. Okay, so we have our final moments here. There's Lodovico attempting to restore order, which needs to happen at the end of a tragedy. The characters who tend to be most worthy are the ones burdened with the task of trying to piece together and restore the world of the play. So we have that with Cassio here. Look, Othello is stripped of his power. Your power and your command is taken off, and Cassio rules in Cyprus. So there's, I guess, a worthy character who is going to take charge and is in power. And so we're left with Othello's own reflection or judgment of himself, his final moments in the play. So yet again we see another attempt to bring up his past service. I have done the state some service and they know it, and yet again he sort of stops himself at that and goes, no more of that. So again, it's sort of like a reflex action to fall back on his sort of civic duties and what he's given to Venice as a country. But then he goes, actually, this isn't applicable anymore. This is not relevant given what I've just done. So there is that kind of shedding and purging of his kind of hubris there. At least that's how I interpret it. And then he starts to try and see himself correctly. So then you must speak of one that loved not wisely, but too well. So in previous videos we've spoken about how being loving and devoted can turn and transform and can easily be exploited as a weakness. I think that's the realisation, the anagnoresis, one of them, that Othello arrives at here, that loving too well can actually leave you susceptible to manipulation and attack. Of one not easily jealous, but where's that gone? Not easily jealous, but being wrought, provoked, iago, and confused in the extreme. Okay, so we're reminded of unbookish jealousy. Again, Othello is a master of combat, but the battle and the conflict of the human heart is a battle that he's not equipped for, I think. So his strength is his weakness. In terms of being a soldier, that means he's ill-equipped for things like deceitful figures and conflicts of emotions. Then the speech ends here with what seems to be yet another reference to previous deeds and previous heroic actions. But there's a but to it here, I think. So set you down this and say besides that in Aleppo once, where a malignant and a turbaned Turk, the non-Christian enemies that he has fought previously, beat a Venetian and traduced or dishonoured the Christian state of Venice. So that turbaned and evil Turk who did that, who spoke and fought against Venice, I, Othello, took him by the throat, the circumcised dog, reference to his Muslim faith, and smote him, killed him thus. And then he kills himself. Now, my interpretation of that seems to be Shakespeare has Othello draw a parallel between the malignant turbaned Turk, the circumcised dog, the animal imagery coming in there, and himself. So is that a reflection that, given the errors of his ways and the folly and the flaws that he has committed and been led to as a tragic hero, does he now see his status not as I have done the state some service, but feels that he is deserving to be ranked in a demoted way with a, let's get all these right, a malignant, turbaned, circumcised Turkish dog. So if that's how he sees himself, if that's the implied comparison here, then we truly have had a fall from grace, haven't we? And a peripeteia from noble and warlike Moor to fully believing and accepting and voicing himself that he is no more than an animalistic creature. But we must not overlook the importance of Iago, our civil monster, in bringing Othello to have that conclusion of himself and about himself. And of course, he leaves the play with a flourish and a heroic couplet. No way but this, killing myself to die upon a kiss. So a bit of dignity restored to Othello there as he leaves the play. Okay, 5 videos, all focused on the tragic arc of Othello across Shakespeare's amazing play. Please let me know if this has been in any way beneficial to any of you, and if it's made any difference to any essays you may have produced. Good luck with your study of Othello. Thank you for listening.